Hello ladies and gentlemen, Grim here, and today we're going to do an artifact tier list for 2020. Keep in mind that this is just my personal opinion based on my personal experience with these artifacts and looking what other people are able to achieve with these artifacts. Though keep in mind, some things might change in time, especially with the Rise of Krypton artifacts, and some of the artifacts might get nerfed in terms of the Rise of Krypton ones. So please do keep in mind the date when this video was made before drawing out conclusions. So with that being said, if you don't agree with this list, that's totally fine. Leave your opinion in the comments down below and we can have a conversation about it. And let's get into it. And of course, if you enjoy this type of content, make sure you hit the subscribe button and hit that like button. It really helps. And yeah, let's go. So we're going to start this off with the E tier. Those artifacts are literally the worst artifacts in the game and you don't really have a reason to build them. We're going to start off with the Agility Artifact. The Agility Artifact is basically going to provide you with additional dot damage, and in theory it sounds great for the League of Anarchy teams, but in practice you got artifacts that buff them more in terms of damage than this would buff them, because they're dot skills with attack. So they would have a far better time and far better damage using other artifacts that you'll see on this list, for example All Blades, than using this one. So yeah, this is just buffing dot damage and buffing attack buffs dot damage more, so it's pretty much useless. Next up we got the Arcane Artifact, yet again, an artifact that buffs the damage on special attacks, but the thing is, we got artifacts that buff specials more by buffing attack yet again, so you literally have no reason to use this because there are simply better alternatives that buff both specials and basic attacks. And next up we got the Tech Artifact. The Tech Artifact is pretty straightforward, gives you health. And it's a tank artifact, but it gives the least amount of health and it's the worst tank artifact, and every single artifact that gives health gives more health in it and at the same time has additional bonuses. And like, I know you are the other tank artifacts are more rare than the tech artifact and you are very likely to have the tech artifact, but building tank artifacts is not a priority for you, so you will most likely, by the time where you can afford to actually build a tank artifact and that's a priority for you, you might as well have one of the more rare artifacts. And on top of that, we're going to have Firebox that we're going to talk about later, which is a far better tank artifact and it's actually a must build for the Apocalypse Raids, so we really have no reason to build tech artifacts. So yeah, this is the E tier. If you don't have 3 artifacts, then definitely keep some of those, but if you are going with above 3 in your total number of artifacts, start shattering every arcane, tech and agility that you see. Now let's move on to the D tier. So in D tier we'll have artifacts that are slightly better than the ones in E tier, but at the same time they are still really not worth building. So we'll start off with Kryptonite Bullets. So those will give you a 100% chance to drain 3 power bars with ranged attack, and you'll deal 75% special attack damage against opponents with less than 5 power bars. So first of all, the first passive is going to be pretty damn annoying because ranged attacks are not a mechanic that's implemented well in Just 2 Mobile, and currently there's literally no strategy in the game that uses ranged attack. Ranged attack, it's an absolute mechanic that they keep trying to make work with artifacts and make it be worth doing, but simply nobody's using it because it doesn't fit well into the overall gameplay. And at the same time, if you want to power drain the enemy, there are far more efficient ways to do it, because even if you manage to squeeze in some ranged attacks in the gameplay, then the opponent still is able to jump over it, and yeah, usually does it. So that passive is kind of useless. And then we have the additional damage when the opponent is below 5 power bars. So first of all, there are far better artifacts if you want damage, and second of all, if you want to use this in Rise of Krypton, you don't really have a reason to, because you're most likely going to use the All Blades, and you're better off using any other artifact because this has the lowest amount of Rise of Krypton passive bonuses. Okay, the next artifact on this D tier is going to be like the Cosmic Staff. Cosmic Staff used to be a pretty dang good tank artifact, but the thing is, the more tank artifacts are added into the game, the lower this goes. Because the Cosmic Staff is going to prevent damage after you take a percentage of damage already. So there's a little bit of a problem with that. Well, some artifacts that we'll talk about later are going to buff your health this way, preventing damage by giving you a bigger amount of health, and they are also going to do something that prevents damage rather than try to fix the problem after it happens. And usually how you take damage is in big chunks of damage, and overall this is a pretty lackluster artifact, and an artifact that is not well thought. Like when it was released it was a pretty good artifact, but the more artifacts you get added, the kind of lower my opinion goes about the cosmic staff. So you shouldn't really build it. Next up, we're going to have the Kryptonite Knife. So this is going to give you a 35% crit chance on basic attacks and a 100% chance of 100% crit damage additional on basic attacks. So first of all, those do not scale on top of your current bonuses, and second of all, you're going to build critical attack chance and critical attack damage on characters on the builds anyway. And at the same time, this is going to only give you crit on basic attacks. So not only is it useless because the builds contain already critical attack chance and critical attack damage, but even if you wanted to equip it on a, let's say, not so build character that you have, which is lacking some critical attack chance and critical attack damage, it still gives it only on basic attacks, making it a very, very bad artifact that at the very least it does something. Like I was very inclined to put it in the E tier, but when I look at the artifacts in E tier, it seems to do a little bit more, though it's still pretty terrible, so definitely don't upgrade this. It also has the lowest amount of bonuses, the lowest tier of bonuses, passive bonuses in the Rise of Krypton Soul Raids, so yeah, don't bother. Next up we got the Mite Artifact. So yeah, like the Mite Artifact is going to be used at only one thing, using the Solo King strategy in Phase 2. So you're going to put this there, it's going to give you additional damage on basic attacks, and at the same time it's going to give you even more additional damage when fighting Brainiac, because he's agility and you're Might with King. First of all, it's only one fight where you're using this, right? With King. Second of all, the strategy is not the safe strategy to use, because if your special tree gets disabled, then you're going to have a rough time. So you have a 25% chance to actually do far worse than any other strategy in Phase 2. And third of all, now with the new artifacts that got added, we actually have some pretty good alternatives to that we'll maybe talk about later. So this is going to be used for only one very specific thing, and that very specific thing has 25% RNG chance to actually fail. So overall, there are, like, you could build this, you could argue for this being a higher tier, and I would be fine with it. But at the end of the day, it's not a good damaging artifact, and in the only place where it's used to actually deal good damage is going to be a non-reliable choice. But yeah, with all being said, don't really go building anything in the D tier really. But yeah, let's move on in the C tier. So starting off with the C tier, we're going to have Electrax. Electrax is pretty much going to have the Arkham Knight Batman passive, which gives you energy and health as you kill an enemy character, and at the same time it is going to deal additional damage against summons. So this is going to be a pretty good artifact to have in specific fights in Soul Raids, particularly against the last left the Joker fight in Apocalypse Soul Raids, if of course you don't have any way to tag out the prisoner. And other than that, it can be used on a support character in Phase 1 to get you as soon as possible to maximum power of bars to start off the fight with a super move. But other than that, the Arkham Knight Batman passive thing is kind of lackluster. Like, don't get me wrong, when it is on Arkham Knight Batman it's amazing, but when you have to occupy an artifact slot with it, it seems kind of pointless, because this is not going to give you more damage but give you health and energy as you kill an opponent. But if you had an artifact that gave you more damage, then you would take less damage and consume less power bars because you would kill your opponent faster. So it's all a bit pointless in my opinion, but it's a decent artifact. I wouldn't really go out of my way to build this one, but if you find it, if you drop it at a pretty high level from Soul Raids, then it's going to be a pretty useful artifact for you in some situations. So yeah, next up we are going to have the Flashing Blade. So the Flashing Blade is going to give you 100% boost damage on basic attacks for each buff of an opponent, and at the same time you'll heal on hit for 10 seconds after a debuff is going to be applied to your opponent. So with each buff on the opponent, I think they also mean the debuffs, because both buffs and debuffs appear as icons in the right corner of the screen. So I guess this can be useful in some particular situations. I honestly haven't seen much gameplay with this. I've seen some, and it doesn't seem amazing, but at the same time it seems that it has potential. So we'll just leave this artifact here for now, because right now the problem is that Beta Club, that we're going to talk about later, is going to do pretty much the same thing, which is buffing the damage you do in our basic attacks, but doing a far better job at it. So right now the Flashing Blade, even if it was decent, is not going to be used. So right now we'll just leave the Flashing Blade here and come back to it on the future tier list. Maybe downgrade it, maybe upgrade it. We'll see how it goes. But for now it has the medium bonuses for the soul rates, and it's okay if you get it. But I will yet again, I wouldn't really go out of my way to upgrade this. So next up we're going to have the Mega Rod. Mega Rod is pretty much going to have a passive that's kind of useless, like blocking a special will give you more damage for your next special. That's useless. Your damage dealer shouldn't block specials, and at the same time your damage dealers should have other artifacts to deal damage. But what's particularly useful is the fact that it's going to make your team kind of immune to power drain, and it's going to kind of reflect the power drain to the enemy, so that if your enemy tries to power drain you, they'll get power drain instead, and you'll get bars of power. So it basically power steals the opponent for him trying to power drain you. And this is particularly useful in fights that have hazards on the ground, like phase 3, like some certain bosses that follow the phase 3 patterns in both of the soul rates that we got so far. So yet again, if you get this at pretty high level, it's going to open up a lot of new strategies for you, and it's going to be pretty useful. But at the same time, it's not an artifact that's really worth upgrading for that reason alone, because there are other ways to do what it does. Next up, we got the Anti-H Metal Armor. It's going to be a solid enough tank artifact, but it's so low on the list for two reasons. First of all, it's not going to be particularly useful or used in raids and soul raids, and at the same time, there are better tank artifacts that you can use. But nevertheless, it's going to give you some health. It's going to give you some pretty useful passive that mitigates damage on legendary characters. And it's going to be a pretty nice thing to see in arena on your opponent, because by damaging one opponent, you are going to damage the entire team. But for now, it's going to just be C tier, because it's going to be a long time before you'll consider building this, because you got a lot of other priorities in terms of the Azure artifacts. Next up, we're going to have the Matelos power source. So this is going to give you 100% chance to resist stuns and dots, and you'll get 3 power bars when resisting it. And when blocking an incoming special attack, 100% of the block damage is going to be accumulated and dealt back to the opponent in the next special, and this resets upon tag out. So the second passive doesn't really work well. Like you're going to first of all, you need to deal damage on your damage dealer, and that passive is not going to be team wide. It resets upon tagging in and out. So when your damage dealer blocks a special attack from the enemy, when the character that's supposed to deal the damage blocks a special, then you're doing something wrong at that point. And the fact that it resets upon tagging in and out is kind of the nail in the coffin for this artifact, and I'm going to regard the second passive as pretty much useless. But at the same time, a 100% chance to resist stuns and dots is going to be pretty damn useful in like some fights that stun you, in some fights that have dots, like phase 3 style of fights yet again, and you're going to get a lot of power bars when resisting them. So this is going to be in some ways a better version of the Mega Rod, and in some ways a worse version, because it doesn't steal the power bars from the enemy. So yeah, that's what it is with the Matelos power source. Again, I haven't seen this artifact in action a lot, but it seems just an average artifact so far. So we'll see how things evolve in time. It's going to have mediocre passive bonuses for the Rise of Krypton soul rates. So yeah, it is what it is. And the last artifact on this tier, and this one you could argue putting a tier lower, but I just put here. First of all, the Kryptonite ring is going to give you some power generation. which is okay, though you don't really need power generation. You're going to get power when tagging in and out, and as the fight goes on, you're gaining more and more power. And the thing is, you got a 1% chance to disable opponent's special tree and super move for 7 seconds when using specials. And by doing this, it kind of opens some new gameplay opportunities in like the Rise of Krypton Soul Raids. But other than that, it doesn't do much. So thinking back on it, I think I could actually downgrade this to a lower tier, but we'll leave it as it is because that power generation is also something, I guess. And if you're going to get this at high level, it might be useful for you in some scenarios. But again, if you wanted to put this artifact to slam it down in D tier, be my guess, my dude, I wouldn't disagree. But yeah, with all that being said, let's move on to the B tier. So starting off the B tier, boy oh boy, we got an Amulet in B tier. Who saw that coming? We got the Amulet of Metahuman. So the Amulet of Metahuman will give you some healing on your character, and that's kind of garbage because kind of all the characters that are going to heal you are going to have the healing scale with their attack, so you are better off giving them attack. So then you're like, why did you put this on B tier Sigval? Well, here, because it has a second passive. Half of the healing effect applies to the entire team, which makes it the best and the only support artifact in the game. There is literally no artifact in the entire game other than this that you can put on a character and never tag that character in the fight and get the benefits from it. Of course, except for the passive bonuses of the Rise of Krypton Soul Raids. And that's why this one is going to be useless once you get 3 artifacts of Rise of Krypton. On Rise of Krypton Soul Raids, and if it was not like this, then it would have been even a tier higher. But when you're outside of Rise of Krypton Soul Raids, when you're doing normal raids, Arena, Champions Arena, Apocalypse Soul Raids, this stuff is going to be the only thing that actually benefits you as an artifact if it's put on a third character that you're going to just keep there for the passive and never tag into the fight. And that's why it's all the way up here. Like, it's not an amazing bonus. Like, if you had another artifact like this that you could put on a third character and never tag that character and get some benefits, this would most likely be a far lower tier. But right now, it's literally the only artifact that gives you that possibility. Next up, we're going to have the Heart of Darkness. First of all, it's going to have the highest passive bonuses for Apocalypse Soul Raids, so that's worth keeping in mind and considering. And second of all, it's going to give you a pretty decent amount of health. Not the highest right now is given by the Lex Corp armor. But other than that, it's going to also give you some power generation as you get hit by critical attack hits. Though that's a kind of a specific request, it really kicks in sometimes and you get huge amounts of power, and it's very annoying to fight in arena. At the same time, it's going to steal any healing that your opponent might have, so it's kind of countering Firebox in terms of that. Again, not particularly useful in raids and soul raids, but pretty useful in arena and Champions Arena. And this was one, it was kind of the second best tank artifact before the Rise of Krypton artifacts came out. It's still a solid tank artifact. I wouldn't really upgrade this first in terms of the Apocalypse materials. I would put it, of course, into a Firebox and then maybe into an Entropy. But this is most likely maybe the third best thing that we got from the Apocalypse Soul Raid artifacts. Next up, we're going to have the Radiant. A lot of people are sleeping on the Radiant. A lot of people are dissing this artifact. A lot of people are disconsidering the artifact, and I think this is very unfortunate. First of all, it gives some pretty garbage things when you're doing ranged attacks, and I think that might be the main turnoff for the people that disconsider this artifact. And yeah, that's garbage. Stop trying to make ranged attack works. It just doesn't go the right way. But the thing is, this is going to give a debuff to the opponent that increases their defense when you do swipe rights. So this makes it that you can just slap this on your combo builder and not worry about the opponent's defense. And tag them in it. Like, this works better in like normal raids and in Rise of Krypton because you're using Gold Blaze there as well, and you always tag in between your damage there. I guess not so much in Rise of Krypton because there you're going to have Rise of Krypton artifacts for the passive bonuses. But this is a pretty good artifact to put on a combo builder and that way reduce the defense of your enemy. Like, it's like having a classic Superman in your team without having to occupy the slot of a classic Superman. But yeah, moving on, we get the Astro Harness. Like Astro Harness right now, it's in a pretty buggy state. Like if you got a level 10 Astro Harness, please do not use it in Arena and Champions Arena because you might get banned. Because this thing is going to make you basically crap out a beam whenever you tag in or whenever the opponent is tagging. That's going to deal a percentage of your damage. And each time you KO an opponent, that damage is going to increase. So pretty much you can one-shot entire teams in Arena and Champions Arena by using this artifact and speeding up the fights this way. You could also do this in campaign and challenges. So at low level, this doesn't do that much, but at high level, yet again, this is not a must-have artifact for any game out in the game. This is not the best artifact for any game out in the game, but at the same time, if you got a very high level one, it's literally the poor man's or the rich man's, if you want to call it like that, SIM cards. And SIM cards that work in Arena and Champions Arena. By putting this on a very high attack character, you can literally skip fights. This thing can literally help you skip fights and kill entire opponent teams in 3 seconds, but yet again, tread carefully and wait until they figure out how to go around it, because right now, if you one-shot teams in Champions Arena in 3 seconds with this, or in 2 seconds, or in 1 second an entire team in Champions Arena, which I have seen with this artifact, the game is going to think that you're using God mode, so take care with that one. Next up, we're going to have the good old Claws of Horus. Claws of Horus is going to be kind of the thing that you use other than All Blades in fights that require only one character to be an active character. So you use this pretty much when you can't tag in and out, and it's going to be particularly useful for a lot of characters when fighting Scarecrow or other fights in other soul rays where you can't tag in and out. But the thing is, the problem with Claws of Horus is that Beta Club is such a far better artifact for doing that. Another artifact that we're going to talk about a little bit later on this tier list is yet again another better artifact at doing this. So Claws of Horus is kind of getting downgraded. It's still pretty high on the list because a lot of the artifacts that are able to replace it are not going to be necessarily available for everybody. So it's still worth putting your Azure materials into a Claws of Horus after you do 2 All Blades or something like that, because you're most likely not going to have one of the artifacts that perform better than Claws of Horus, and especially at high level. So Claws of Horus is going to be still a very good alternative, but I don't think it's the best anymore at what it does. But still putting it pretty high because it's going to be what most of you are going to be able to use, including myself. Well, not really, since on one account I get something that's a better alternative that we'll talk about later, but yeah, anyway. And next up we're going to have the Region Matrix. It's a pretty straightforward artifact. Like, we're going to kind of disregard the bonus damage that it gives to Superman. Like, if this is going to revive a character, and if Superman is the character that dies and gets revived, then this is going to also give him double the attack. And this is just going to be annoying in Arena and CA if you're fighting a Superman that has it. But other than that, if you want more damage on Superman, you put another artifact that gives it damage, and you don't have to let it die. But other than that, it pretty much does what it says. It revives a character that dies. It prevents a character from dying. And that's a good thing to do. That's a very good thing to do, and that's a good thing to put on characters that you simply don't want dead, on essential characters. Like, for example, you put this on Entangling Poison Ivy if you're using her as support for the Heartbreak Harley Quinn League of Anarchy. But it's not as good as it used to be, because like, Entropy kind of does the same thing, prevents characters from dying. It just does it in another way, and it does it in a little bit of a more efficient way. So that's why it kind of fell a little bit in previous tier lists. I think this was higher, but if you don't have Entropy, this is going to be the next best thing, pretty much. And next up we got the Kryptonite Spear. So the Kryptonite Spear is going to make all these specials above 20 hits unblockable. Again, I'm talking about level 10 stats. So making specials unblockable is not really necessary, because if your specials get blocked, you're not doing it right. You're not playing the game properly, okay? If you have a problem with specials getting constantly blocked, you're not doing your job right. Next up is going to increase the maximum amount of hits that are going to be regarded as damage all the way up to 70 hits, resulting in 150 extra damage. And upon using specials, you're going to heal for 0.5 85% of the damage dealt. And it makes also basic attacks bypass super blocks. So yeah, if you have seen my artifact review on this one, like this is a free artifact we get from the Apocalypse Soul, and compared to the Firebox, which is for the Rise of Krypton Soul, so compared to the Firebox, which is the artifact that we get for free from Apocalypse Soul, this is going to be pretty trash. Like, first of all, as I said, it's not particularly useful to have your abilities unblockable, because your abilities shouldn't get blocked. The all the way to level 70 combo resulting in extra damage, it sounds good on paper, but there's two problems with it. First of all, it's not going to be a passive that's shared team-wide. This has to be on your damage dealer. So since this has to be on your damage dealer, it's not going to be used in Apocalypse Soul raids, it's not going to be used in normal raids or arena, because you got better options. Like for arena you got Lex Corp that we're going to talk about, and for the normal raids you got All Blades, which is going to benefit you far more. And at the same time, it takes a lot of time to get to 70 hit combo. The AI is annoying and can interrupt it all the way to 70 hit combo, and if you're using Gold Blades, by the time you get to 70 hit combo, you're going to most likely, if using Gold Blades, do 3 specials in the same time. So the only thing that this might do is, it's going to bypass super shields. That's a guaranteed, and it's going to be useful for that, and I'll give it that. And second of all, it might be the best artifact for damage dealers in like Rise of Krypton Soul raids. Once you got like 3 high level stat bonuses artifacts, like let's say 2 spears and 1 Lex Corp, 3 spears, 2 Lex Corps and 1 spear, you might over there you might find a reason to equip the Rise of Krypton Spear on your damage dealer. That's the only scenario where you might try to equip this on your damage dealer and make use of any of the passive abilities, and bypassing super shields against some specific bosses. But it's so high on the list because it's going to be something that everybody gets, and is going to provide also the highest amount of passive bonuses for Rise of Krypton Soul raids. At the same time with Lex Corp. So if you got Lex Corp, upgrade Lex Corp, but most of you will not. So definitely this is the second best thing to upgrade for Rise of Krypton Soul raids. Oh, also Beta Club, upgrade Beta Club, though it might get nerfed, so be careful with that, but it's going to be what most of you will upgrade for as a Krypton Soul raids for the passive stats, and just let it over there on the support character. But yeah, overall a pretty underwhelming artifact. But yeah, with that being said, let's move on to the A tier. So, moving on to the A tier, we are going to start off with Entropy. Entropy is going to prevent you from taking damage higher than a percentage of your health. So this is going to pretty much prevent characters from dying and getting one-shotted, pretty much doing a better job at preventing characters from dying than the Regent Matrix. It's also going to provide you with some dodge resistance, and at the same time is going to mitigate some of the dodge secondary effects. Overall, it's a very solid artifact and one of the best defensive artifacts. It literally does prevent the damage as you take it, unlike other artifacts. It doesn't give you additional health, it just says that you can take a lot of damage before dying, because you're going to take it only in instances of damage. Not particularly useful if you fight characters that deal multiple instances of damage with special attacks, like for example Brainiac Special 1 or Black Adam Special 3, but it's going to be a pretty damn solid artifact. In my opinion, the second best artifact that we have in terms of the Apocalypse Soul raids artifacts. And yeah, it's going to be a good choice and help you out against Darkseid in Apocalypse Soul raids. So yeah, overall solid artifact. Though upgrade your Firebox first of all. And next up, we're going to have an artifact that's going to be very underrated for a long time, because this is going to, reduce damage from blocking. That's garbage. I'm not going to even talk about that, but 75% more damage on basic tag and swipe attacks. So people thought it was a lot of damage on basic attacks when you had the Firebox giving you initial damage on your swipe right. This gives you additional damage on every single basic attack, and that's pretty much amazing and might be the best artifact to be used on Black Manta, Batman, Catwoman, and King. But there's only one problem. Right now we got the the Beta Club, which is going to do the same thing, but like 100 times better. So I'm just going to put this here because if you don't have Beta Club and you have this most likely going to be the second best thing for dealing damage on those characters that are going to fight fights where they can't make use of all blades by tagging in and out, or they just have a better time not tagging in and out, like Black Manta. So I'm just going to leave this here. Like, if Beta Club gets nerfed, this is going to be definitely deserving its place. If you don't have Beta Club, definitely invest in this. But right now we just have Beta Club, which is broken and does this artifact shop but 100 times better. So by keeping that in mind, you could downgrade this to B tier. But yeah, I'm just going to leave this into A tier for now, and we'll see how it goes. Now let's get into the S tier. So getting into the S tier, we're going to start off with Beta Club, and dude, like, if you love the fact that Beta Club is so powerful, all the more power to you. If you hate the fact that Beta Club is so broken, understandable, I guess. But love it or hate it, you can't deny that right now it's the best artifact in the game for so many teams, for so many game modes. So yeah, this deals huge amounts of damage. So in theory, it's just going to deal some dot on your basic attacks, equal to a percentage of your attack. And slow the power generation for the enemy team if dot is active on them. So on paper this sounds kinda garbage, but the thing is, this dot damage, when you reapply it, it does two things. First of all, it refreshes the duration of the dot, and second of all, it stacks upon each other. So you're going to get increasing damage. And that damage will get, let's say, all the way to crazy numbers. Like, bro, I've seen some things. I've seen like 30 million dot damage per second dealt in the Rise of Krypton Solar Raids. This artifact is right now unholy. And as I said, love it or hate it, you can't deny the fact that right now, it's a fact that it's the best artifact in the game. One-shot Scarecrow in tier 8, one-shot Phase 3. It's beyond broken, it's beyond overpowered. But yeah. Moving on to the Firebox. Firebox is going to be the best artifact used in Apocalypse or raids in most fights. It's going to give you a healing when you get low on health. It's going to remove the stuns and debuffs again when you get low on health. And it's going to give you some increased damage on swipe attacks. And it's going to have the highest passive bonuses for Apocalypse or raids. So overall, a very, very solid artifact. A must-have for Soul Raids, and a very useful artifact even other game modes. And an artifact that's going to enable infinite combos for a lot of characters. Next up, one of my favorite artifacts lately. We got the Lex Corporate Suit. Lex Corporate Suit is going to give you the highest amount of health out of all the artifacts. Like, this gives you the highest amount of passive health. It has the highest amount of bonuses in Rise of Krypton Soul Raids. It's going to give you a 1% chance of armor pierce on special abilities. And that's going to deal a lot of damage. Because armor reduces your damage by far more than you could imagine. And at the same time, you're going to get a 1.5% damage, like not attack, damage. And when it says damage boost, it's going to be allowed for every 1% defense the opponent has. So the more defense the opponent has, the more damage you're going to deal with your special attacks. And at the same time, after you do successful special, it's going to activate for 15 seconds a 50% defense shield. And also apply some tenacity to you that doesn't allow debuffs to be inflicted. I think the tenacity it applies with not allowing debuffs to be applied is a little bit buggy, but this artifact is amazing. Like, this might be, if a spear doesn't pull some crazy stuff off when you get like a full build of artifacts, and most of you will not get to that point, let's be real. In Rise of Krypton Soul Raids is most likely the best choice you have for damage dealing in Rise of Krypton Soul Raids. Granted, you have artifacts that are giving you total buffs higher than like All Blaze does with 2 of them. There's going to be a very good tank artifact, and this is going to be like the best in-slot artifact for Arena and Champions Arena fights to use on your damage dealer, because dealing armor-piercing damage is going to be amazing. Like, I deal more damage with this on King Special Tree and Multiverse Armor Supergirl Special Tree than I would deal with like 3 All Blaze stacks in Arena and Champions Arena because of that armor pierce. And at the same time, this is going to, on top of it, give me 150% health and a shield after I do a special. This is most likely the best artifact we have for Arena and Champions Arena. It's also useful in Scarecrow fights with King and like Phase 2 fights, making the fight overall more safe. Though, as I said, in those fights, Beta Club is going to be by far the best thing. But yeah, I'm really, really happy with this artifact and how it performs, and I think it's literally one of the best artifacts in the game. And the last one, It's going to be, you all know it, you all love it, you all want it. It's going to be the All Blades. All Blades is going to give you 150% attack boost, calculated by base attack when you tag in for a certain amount of seconds, and it's going to stack, so you can have like 3 or 4 buffs of it available. It's been a staple for damage dealers for a very long time. It's still used by most damage dealers, except for those that can abuse the beta club, and it's going to stay that way for a while. And right now, how we got it with Rise of Krypton Soul Raids, where the Rise of Krypton passive buffs are going to be applied just for the Rise of Krypton artifacts being in your team. You're going to still be using All Blades for a long time on your damage dealer and just putting the Rise of Krypton artifact on your support characters. So that being said, this is going to be not necessarily the best artifact for dealing damage, because I think the Lex Corp is far better in Arena, and the Beta Club is going to be far better on some teams in steroids. But this is going to be the best damage dealing artifacts when it comes to being applicable to all the game modes and all the characters. Like, it's going to be the furthest reach artifact, and it's going to be the safest one to upgrade. It's going to just be great. All Blades is great. But yeah, with all that being said, this concludes the tier list. Then I think this video will be long. Hopefully I didn't lose any sound of footage as I lost with the all characters tier list that I did previously. But nevertheless, thank you for watching. Like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed the videos. Like if you dislike it, make sure to let me know in the comments what you think about this and what you would change about it. And I'll see you all in the next one.